Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Today's show is going to be deeply disjointed. I'll tell you that for nothing. Where are we? 10:03. 4 minutes ago, I was on the BBC talking to Nikki Campbell about the fact that Angela Rayner has given the go-ahead for the demolition of Grenfell Tower. I'm sure that will be on BBC iPlayer, but they be here at 9:30. They said at 7:30 this morning. So I turned up, and they promised me we'll be over and done within 15 minutes. I actually finished at 9:59.59. So yeah, it's a bit fraught this morning. But however, all of that aside, Chris Ford is here. Good morning, Chris, and Jim Turner is here as well. So morning, chaps. Good morning. The other lunatics here, Gary Muirhead was here at 7:31, and there he said that first of the party. Where is everyone? Probably having a lie-in if they had any sense. Let's have a look. Not Gary. Peter McKenna says, naughty boy Mark, putting it on late so we couldn't comment. I would have been here at 2:30 a.m. In actual fact, I did put it on late. I didn't schedule this show until this morning because I left this show yesterday, went straight into a meeting, ended up writing as a result of it. And time got away with me. So there we are. Ken Hatcher says, we are more important than the BBC. Well, I've got to be honest with you, Ken. I agree. I agree with you 100%. And at 9:59, my finger was hovering over the leave button. and the other finger was hovering over the go live button. So, yeah, it was all a bit fraught. Mark Whiting is here as well. Dan Cullen says, good news, be good to get it demolished. That's my feeling. And I listen, I'm no Labour Party fan, and I'm certainly no fan of Angela Rayner, but I do actually think, personally speaking, I do think she's made the correct and quite a courageous decision. I think there are lots and lots of very good reasons to keep it where it is, but we are talking about a building that has been severely damaged by fire, obviously, and probably by water damage as well as part of the firefighting effort. It's also been left effectively to fester for the last nearly 8 years, and there has been some concerns about its structural stability as well. So I do think she's made the right decision. I still question whether anyone would actually want the demolition contract. I'm sure people will be queuing at the door because, it is work at the end of the day, and that's what we're all about. But I was reminded by the BBC researcher first thing this morning, and then again by Nikki Campbell just a moment ago. Can you imagine the scrutiny that people are going to be under? And even things like, I have to admit, I hadn't thought of this. I was coming at this from a very sort of demolition-centric perspective, and one of my concerns is for the mental well-being of the demolition workers that are actually working within and around that building. Ultimately, they are walking on the site of a tragedy where 72 people perished needlessly. So I've been very concerned about their sort of mental well-being, and I sincerely hope that whoever wins the project actually puts in place some kind of counselling program, perhaps. But one of the questions that I was asked off air, I think it was about people, for example, turning up for work on your first day at Grenfell Tower and taking a selfie with the tower in the background. I would like to think that the demolition workers and the demolition contractor chosen to do the work eventually will have the sensitivity to not do that, and perhaps better safe than sorry, bearing in mind the fact that the Daily Mail will probably have a telephoto lens aimed at it for the entire duration of the demolition, bearing in mind also the feelings and the scrutiny from the bereaved families. If whoever wins that, demolition contractors, I'm looking at you right now, if you win the contract, can I suggest that you ban mobile phones on that site? Just to safeguard yourselves. There is always the concern over ghoulishness. Sounds like an old word, that, but there is always a concern about that, and I to the point where once it is freed up and we turn it into a demolition site rather than the standing memorial it is at the moment, I wouldn't be at all surprised if you had some hairy-assed Herbert jumping over the fence to try and get in there and have a look around. So whoever wins the contract, I wish you well with it. Think long and hard is what I would say. Our friend Mick is here as well. Morning, Mick. Dan Cullen says, I think it's an eyesore now. It is. And one of the subjects that came up on the Beeb just a moment ago was it stands as a reminder, which I think if you're one of the bereaved families, I think is probably a good thing, maybe a good thing. But it also stands as a reminder that that's where 72 people died. So, my feeling is, with Ken Hatcher, I think it's right and proper that it should be demolished. I think it should be replaced with something suitable and something appropriate. But I think, personally speaking, if the 72 people, if their deaths are to mean anything, it should be marked by an overhaul of the construction procurement system that allowed that set of circumstances to flourish and for that tragedy to happen. That's my feeling on it. Dan Cullen says, well said, Mark. Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dan. So, yes, as I say, might be a bit disjointed because I was still prepping the show when I was summoned. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this largely disjointed show on the road. Yeah, very well said, Mick. Whoever takes it on will be damned in the eyes of the residents. Wouldn't surprise me if an outside the UK contractor takes it on. It wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, I hope that's not the case. I do hope that's not the case. One of the things that I said on the show just a moment ago is the fact that we do have some absolutely elite level demolition contractors, and I'm thinking here specifically about the likes of Erith and McGee and DSM and Armac and people like that. They could do that. They could do that very professionally, very effectively, very sensitively. I've got no doubt about it, but they are going to be under absolutely intense scrutiny. Chris Ford says, business is business. You can't let sentiment stand in the way. Hopefully it will be done respectfully. If you died tomorrow and came back in 100 years, the grass will still be growing green. Yeah, it's true. It is true. The problem you've got, I think, with Grenfell is that it's been allowed, or perhaps it's been encouraged, to go beyond tragedy that impacted 72 people and their families. It's become a political football. So, for example, going back to Mick's point, if the demolition contractor was appointed from outside of the UK, you just know full well that there'll be a Conservative minister saying, entrusting this vital piece of demolition to an outside agent. What is wrong with you people? And it will just be used as a political football. And whoever the demolition contractor is, whether they're a UK based or somewhere else, they will be the football. They will be caught right in the middle of that. Jim Turner, can't really expect the lads to spend a year or more to mope about straight-faced whilst at work. Plenty of folk have died all over the shop. Sad, but life and work goes on. The issue you've got, no, I wouldn't expect them to mope. And yes, they, as somebody's rightly said, it is business. You are just going about your business. But you just know full well, one person turns up and decides, I'm going to take a selfie with Grenfell Tower in the background, and then puts it on Facebook. The person, their employer, the demolition industry, probably the Labour Party as well, will be castigated forever for that. It's just an unnecessary hassle. I think they'd be much better off putting a gate a long way away from the tower. Hand in your phones, fellas. I mean, we do it at secure sites, petrochem sites and nuclear sites. Not unusual to hand your phones in. I don't think that'd be a bad idea at all. Econ Group, be a good company too. Vested interest, they call that, Dan. Vested interest. But we all know it has to come down. If left up, it will collapse. And then who do we blame? Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I was asked predominantly off air is the methodology. I mean, bearing in mind its location, you'd have to think the explosive demolition is out of the way, and I always think that explosive demolition is slightly less respectful anyway, because it is just a wham bam, thank you bam. Could you top down it? Given the known structural stability of it, could you top down it? I don't know. How big a high reach are you going to need? Is there enough space to put a decent sized high reach in there? I don't know. There's lots and lots of challenges to be overcome, but I'm sure it'll all become clear in the fullness of time. But it is. I'm just going to check because I need to make sure. Yes, it is Thursday, the 6th of February. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, a new pretender to Bobcat's skid steer crown? Maybe. Ship breaking done right. Revamping a Korean parking lot with a Hyundai excavator. And we're going large, and I do mean properly large, with a Komatsu P&H rope shovel. And yes, fun enough, it's odd how these things sometimes tie in. My morning monologue today, cast as the villain, how the demolition industry has allowed itself to be vilified. I wrote this yesterday before I knew I was going to be speaking to the Beeb, and yet it sort of ties in. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says, we're always having a laugh at work. Why should that job be any different? I take what you're saying. I'm not sure, and maybe I'm just a sensitive old sod. I don't believe that's the case, but I do wonder if just how comfortable I would be working in an area where 72 people perished. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I've seen it lots, but the one that really sticks in my head was I went to see an explosive demolition over in Porto, in Portugal, and we walked the building before we walked it the day before, but we also walked it the morning of the blast as well. And because the tower had been cleared sort of in a bit of a hurry, there were discarded children's dolls and doll prams and footballs and tiny little toddlers' bicycles. And it does really give you pause. And I just, listen, as I say, maybe I am just getting a bit sensitive in my old age. I'm not entirely sure how I would feel about doing that. To the point where if somebody, and I very much doubt they would even be allowed to do it, but if the winning demolition contractor phoned me up and said, Mark, we're on Grenfell, we think you should come along with the film crew, I'd decline. That's how I feel about it. Mick says top down, but it would have to be done piecemeal. Again, all I would question is the actual stability. I mean, bearing in mind it's been undermined by a very serious fire, there will be water damage as well, I would imagine, and it's nearly 8 years on. What has happened to that building in the 8 years? I mean, obviously, I would imagine they'll be sending the crews in to analyse it before they actually make a start anyway. My understanding is at least some, if not all of the asbestos has been removed as well. So Jim says, definitely needs to be a UK crowd. Our country needs all the help it can get. Trying to put a positive spin on this, maybe, given the scrutiny that this project will be under, perhaps this is an opportunity for us to remind the world of just how good, how professional, how efficient, how sensitive, how respectful the UK demolition industry can be. It certainly would, if the winning demolition contractor can pull that off without incident, without upsetting the bereaved families, without incurring the wrath of the Daily Mail and its readers, that's a bit of a feather in their cap and in the industry's cap, I would say. Dan says explosive wouldn't be possible. Too much noise and dust and possibly asbestos. As I say, I think at least most of the asbestos has been removed. I don't know about the rest of it, but yes, and it is a built-up area. Yeah, that would certainly be my feeling. I mean, I can't even remember the last time there was a proper explosive demolition project in London anyway. It's a good couple of years, I would say. And even then it was, it has to be in kind of the middle of nowhere. Jim, my friend, there is a lot of resentment to those directly involved families. Respect is the main thing in this demolition. Yeah, I agree. And I will get to the mystery machine in just a moment. But there are some demolition companies in this country who are, seems like a strange thing to point out, bearing in mind what they actually do for a living. But there are some companies, and I would list SafeDem as a real prime example of this, but also Armac and Erith, who are exceptionally good at community outreach. And I think that's going to be absolutely vital there. I mean, I do think, the powers that be, despite the reasoning behind Grenfell, how it happened and everything that's gone on before, I think involving the local residents and certainly involving the bereaved families has been handled by and large fairly well. I think if the demolition contractor involved can get those same people involved from an early point, show them what they're going to do, tell them exactly what stage they're at, what comes next, how they're going to, and I do think, if they can involve the families, if they can involve the local community, I think it will make the lives of those families and those residents much easier. I also think it will make life a lot easier for the demolition contractor as well. Anyway, Jim says people have died, been murdered, abused, and God knows what else all over the world. That place is no different, just more recent, that's all. They should get all the kit and lads in, have a remembrance service for the dead, and then crack on as usual. I don't think they'll be allowed to crack on as usual. I really don't. And the problem with media scrutiny, but also I think public scrutiny, is it kind of has that snowball effect. If they are seen once to be in any way disrespectful, then the telephoto lens that's already pointed at them will become 10 telephoto lenses. Everybody will be looking for the next thing to shout about. Bearing in mind, never mind the bereaved families who have got every right to be concerned, but we do live in a society and certainly in a nation now where we are professionally outraged about everything all the fucking time. And I do think, you just got to tread carefully. Anyway, I did promise you the mystery machine, and the mystery machine you shall have. What have we got here? Dan Cullen says, well said, Jim. They don't do this for those of Didcot, have they? No. And again, I mean, that was one of the things that I felt uncomfortable about with Didcot. They, as you well know, it was roughly half the cooling tower, half of the boiler house that came down, and the other half was brought down by explosive demolition with the bodies of 3 of the 4 men still there. I understand the necessity, I understand the practicalities, but even to this day, that felt very, very uncomfortable, inappropriate, if you know what I mean. What's Mick saying? I think there should be a joint effort by the top-tier demo firms. If anyone, John Woodward should be in line as the main man. Yeah. John or his successor, Mike Keogh, both of whom are absolute elite level, I would say, and both have the sensitivity required, I think. So yes, if there is a demolition contractor out there who is in the running for that, I mean, it was only announced. Well, it's not even officially announced. It's going to be announced on Friday, apparently. So yes, if there is a company out there that is lucky enough to win that contract, maybe get on the blower to John Woodward or Mike Keogh and get them involved. Now, this will give you all hope, I would say. Dan Cullen says, going out to work, so may not be able to negotiate the mystery machine. Right, should we give it a few seconds, let him leave, and give somebody else a chance to win? Let me get the right piece of paper. I have written it down. Yes, I do have it right there. So we've done the mystery machine. This is what you've got to work with. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? We're looking for, as always, a make and a model. And just to be clear, that is the natural colour of the machine. I've done nothing to it. Nothing to it as well. And oddly enough, there we are. Mick saying, or Mike Keogh. Yeah, Mike Keogh as well. I think both of them. I mean, bear in mind that John Woodward started C&D Consultancy, and he then subsequently sold it to Mike Keogh, and John is still working with Mike on some occasions. I think both of them have elite level knowledge, but they also have elite level sensitivity, respect, understanding, media savvy. Listen, Mick, we really agree on football, but on that, I totally agree. Mike Keogh, John Woodward would make a great addition to the team. So, yes, there is your mystery machine. While you're thinking about that, have I told you what the question of the day is? I told you it was going to be disjointed today. I've just posted it in the chat, but I'm going to remind you immediately after I've done that of today's question of the day. Yeah, our question of the day today comes with us just a sprinkle, a soupçon, if you will, of Italian flavouring. And it is this. Imagine you find yourself in an Italian restaurant, maybe here, or better still, somewhere in Italy. But you can choose just one main course. And your choice is between pizza, the pizza of your choice, or pasta. What are you going to go for, pizza or pasta? Ken Hatcher, you don't need to answer because I think we already know what you're going to say. But pizza or pasta? Personally, last 2 times I've been to Italy, and I've probably been to Italy 8-9 times in the last couple of years. The last couple of times I've been, I have eaten one pizza, but lots of pasta. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of pizza, particularly the way the Italians do it. Bit of burnt on the crust, very thin. I love it. But get me in front of that pasta, man. Oh, all day long. Chris Ford, I think he's going the same route as our friend Mr. Hatcher. Pizza all day long, he says. Going back to, what do we got here? Everyone is always looking for something to be upset about. This will be no different. So who does it needs to get to the drop plan and schedule agreed and have a very good rate for waiting time, as the spineless MPs will cave and the job will end up starting before it's even finished. Yeah, I think that is definitely a possibility. I do think that's a possibility. I mean, even down to, this has only just occurred to me, having read that from Jim, even down to what will happen to the materials, bricks, blocks, concrete, whatever it might be, that are taken out of that building. There will need to be a system in place to track them, because you know full well there is probably somebody out there at the moment thinking, ooh, souvenir bricks from the Grenfell Tower on eBay? Yes, please. That's the kind of shit you're dealing with. So beware, people. So here we are, Mystery Machine. Dan Cullen immediately in with an Atlantic material handler. 'Tis not. Jim Turner is going for the Hitachi 1250 long reach. It's not. A Case CX240 BLC, said Dan Cullen. Nope, it's not. He's also going for, I thought he was going out, and yet here he is. He's going for a Sany SMHW30, and he's also going for a Sany SMHC35. It's none of those things. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. But I'm going to go back to this. Chris Ford says 30 to 40,000 Londoners were killed in the Blitz. Yeah, they were. They were. I think the difference with that is that, and again, I mean, I won't bore you with the story and the legend behind the formation of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. But as a result of the Blitz, there were so many fire damaged and bomb damaged buildings. It was a case of get them on the, pardon my French, get them on the fucking ground quickly before they fall over and kill somebody else. I think we have a chance with this to be more controlled, more respectful, more sensitive and stuff. That's see, now I was expecting a few people to follow my line here. Jim Turner said, also going for pizza. We have some pizza fans. Mick says, good point, Mark. Even I have a seat from your old ground. Been trying to make it into a toilet seat. Yeah, I had one and I gave it. One of my mates is most of my mates are West Ham fans. I don't get out much, but I was actually given a seat, and I gave it to a mate of mine. He was Wasn't doing particularly well at the time, and it seemed like the right thing to do. So, yeah. I actually thought you'd gone Shakespearean, Jim. If I show you this, his original answer was quaff pizza, and he said not quaff, but question of the day. Sounds like past. He did quote, he quaff. I don't know what the hand's about, but he did quaff. But thank you, Jim. Thank you for your contribution. Back to the mystery machine. Let me show you a smidge more. There you are. There's a bit of boom, I would say there. If anybody's got any thoughts on that, Dan Cullen has just piped up with the Sany SMHC50. Tell you now, not a Sany. Not a Sany at all. We're going to be right back with a new breed of skid steer loader. Yeah, have a look at, well, after this. I can't think of another field of construction equipment where one brand has such a global dominance. A skid steer loader, let's face it, a skid steer is a Bobcat. There are others. There other brands are available, but it's a Bobcat. And yet we have another company entering the fray from Singapore, of all places. I agree, Jim. That music was very Pirates of the Caribbean. And oddly enough, that was my feeling as well, Mick. Weird-looking thing. The front doesn't look right. Bearing in mind that Bobcat do have such a global dominance in the field of skid steers, you'd have thought they'd have come to market with something sexy instead of something that looks a bit old-fashioned. Unless that thing is as cheap as chips, are they really going to have a hope in hell of stealing Bobcat's crown? I very much doubt it. Now, we've got some more guesses on our mystery machine, which currently looks like that. Chris Ford is going for the Devellon DX300 LC 7SLR. It is not. I can tell you, despite the fact that he said he was going out and then didn't, Chris, no, not Chris, where is he? Where's he gone? There we are. Dan Cullen has gone for the Link Belt 380 X4. It's not. He's also gone for the link belt 360X2. It's not. And he's also gone for the link belt 250X4. It's none of those things, but he's pretty damn close. Dan is also saying, great tune. Looks like a skiddy of yesterday. Yeah, that was my feeling. If you'd have said that, those had been dredged up from the 1980s or the late 1980s, I'd have agreed with you. So there you are. There's a little bit more Mystery Machine to be going on with. If you've got any thoughts on that, please let us know. As I say, Dan Cullen is the closest yet. Right back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Ship breaking. Oh, there's a can of worms. Yeah, some countries do ship breaking, but very, very poorly. Pakistan, Turkey, places like that. But it is possible to do it well, like this.
HMAS Sirius was a supply tanker that carried over 34,000 cubic metres of fuel for the Royal Australian Navy from 2006 till 2021. Sirius stood as a testament to the Navy's strength and resilience, operating under the motto, to serve and provide. Contracted by the Department of Defence, Burden carefully planned the deconstruction and recycling to ensure the legacy of HMAS Sirius would be honoured throughout the process. With its impressive length of 191 metres, a beam of 32 metres, and weighing in at over 10,000 tonnes, this iconic vessel presented Burden with some daunting challenges, not least of which to carefully plan a method to safely remove her from the water when no existing facility in Australia was able to compliantly do so. Fueled by their motto, "Make it happen," Burden rose to the challenge by developing and implementing some innovative solutions to ballast Sirius down to the seabed and carefully cut her in two sections, allowing for the safe lift and transfer from the water. With a commitment to sustainable practices, Burden achieved an impressive recycling rate of over 99%, setting new industry standards and demonstrating their dedication to the recycling industry and the environment. Throughout the project, Burden prioritised safety, protected the environment, and managed operational efficiency. As the remarkable journey of HMAS Sirius is reflected upon, Burden takes pride in their accomplishments and the impact they have made in the field of maritime decommissioning. Burden, make it happen.
Very smart. Very smart indeed. Just going back, we'll go back to the Mystery Machine in a second, but Jim Turner, going back to our the Power Plus skid steer loaders. Machines in a yard doing solder isn't very promotional for them. They need to put them to work and show folk how efficient they work. I've got to be honest, when I first received that video, my feeling was this must be Chinese, because that is very much the Chinese way. Go out the front of the factory, park up a machine or two, put a drone around them and play some grand music over the top. Turns out they're from Singapore. But yeah, they've got that flavour, and I totally agree with you. Jim also says, not a very long carrier for a ship. Smart bit of demolition, though. Gary Muirhead has just arrived, just in time to miss out on the Mystery Machine. What do we got here? Let me go back to the Mystery Machine. Let me put it up on the screen, because we had Mick saying it could be a Fuchs. It's not a Fuchs. We've also got the MHL 331. It's not, but it is, in fact, as Dan Cullen has correctly identified, one of those. It's a link belt 600 X4. That's what it is. Congratulations, Dan. No great surprise that you won it. You gave everybody hope by saying you were popping out, but you then reneged on that and have got the right answer. So there you are. That's what it looks like. Very, very American machine. I have to admit, I do enjoy going to see Link Belt over at ConExpo, because their stand is always fantastic. Always lots of stars and stripes about the place. So yeah, congratulations, Dan. It is a Link Belt. A 600 X4. Very smart it looks too as well. Let's have a look. Not carrier, Korea. Oh, I see. Oh, that makes more sense. That does make more sense. And wow, Link Belt, look, a tidy piece of kit. They do. Again, I would say the same about Link Belt as I would say about John Deere. Why are you not here, guys? Why are you not here? We have a ready audience. Gary Muir says, sorry, I'm late. 600 cubic meter concrete pour on a turbine base. would have been easier for me to delay the show fresh off the BBC as I was this morning. But yeah, good of you to join us, Gary. Good luck with your concrete. We think about this for a second, okay? Here's how international this show is. So our Mystery Machine was American. The Power Plus skid steers come from Singapore. We've just been in Australia looking at shipbreaking. We're off to Korea in a second.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, the film I'm about to show you, I mean, it's nicely shot. There's a bit of drone action in it as well. But the thing that attracted me to this is you see the machine doing its thing, but they've also done a picture-in-picture, so you can see the operator doing his thing that makes the thing happen. I'm going to play it to you, partly because I thought it was an interesting, but also as a reminder. I'm going to show this to Fred later today because I would like to think we can start to use this because I think this is a fantastic way of looking at the construction process. So sit back and enjoy this. This is Hyundai in Korea.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
Smart way of filming. Now, I'm going to show you a comment in a second, but I'm going to do a bit of a build-up because not everybody will be familiar with the gentleman in question. So imagine you were sat at a piano kind of two fingers doing chopsticks, and then Chopin walked in. Or imagine you're over the park and you've got a football at your feet and you're about to take a free kick and David Beckham pitches up. That's kind of how I feel right now, because there's a certain gentleman called David Phillips who has forgotten more about construction equipment this morning than I have learned in 35 years. He says, morning, David, just a note on Power Plus, they're not a manufacturer in their own right. Instead, they're a dealer in Singapore that represents about 20 different Chinese manufacturers, which would explain the design, selling about 50 types of equipment. Beware the Ides of Power Plus. Yes, thank you, David. You see, people know stuff. David knows lots of stuff. I respect him above virtually everybody in this business, I have to say. So thank you for that, David. So yes, if anybody offers you a Power Plus, which does sound like a caffeine tablet, doesn't it? Oh, that's Pro Plus. Yeah, if anybody offers you a Pro Plus skid steer, know that A, they didn't make it, and B, it's come from China. That is, I will leave you to decide upon the quality. But thank you for that, David. Much appreciated. We've got one more film left. Right back after this. Those of you that are operating machines as we speak, or between times, what sort of size machine are you on? 8 ton? 12, 14, 20, 25? Imagine being sat behind the levers of a 1,600-ton machine. Three pass loading, a 793. That's not messing about, is it? According to the old fella, it gets boring after you've done it for years, digging the same face all day, every day. Yeah, I would imagine it does. But you'd be doing it in some comfort, wouldn't you? And I've said this before. I bought my wife and I a Isuzu Trooper once. I don't know why. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. Felt like you owned the road. You were a bit higher and a bit bigger than everything else. Imagine that. Imagine if that were your office. You'd feel pretty damned important, wouldn't you? I think I would. And smug too. So that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. If you, I am going to roll the outro in just a second, and then I'm going to leap gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. And I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you immediately after this. To those working within the field of demolition, their industry is highly professional. Their every move is governed by multiple layers of regulation and legislation. There's a training course for everything and a competence card to match. There's a clearly defined hierarchy and everyone knows their role. And even though no two demolition projects are the same, each contract is carried out with rehearsed and choreographed precision. That, however, is not the wider perception. The public, for example, still firmly believes that Fred Dibner was the last word in demolition technology, that demolition contractors are forever blowing stuff up, and that they regularly pitch up and demolish a much-loved and historic building just because they've got nothing better to do. And the perception among those in the neighbouring construction sector isn't much better. In some instances, it's worse. Those in construction see themselves as the elite, and those in demolition as knuckle-dragging halfwits, not as partners, but as a necessary evil to be endured on the path to the building of their shiny new structure. Through its silence, the demolition industry has allowed itself to be cast in the role of villain. It's allowed others to present a false narrative that is not representative of the demolition industry of today. And of course, the industry hasn't always helped itself in that regard. It's hard to claim that demolition is not a hazardous environment in which to work while it continues to experience site injuries and fatalities. But the demolition sector has enacted way more health and safety controls than its cousins in construction. And while a single death or injury in the workplace is one too many, the demolition industry hurts and kills far fewer people taking buildings down than construction does putting them up. Some may point to the £60 million in fines handed down to 10 demolition contractors and suggest that the sector walks a fine line of legality. But various parts of the construction sector went down the same path with the Competition and Markets Authority, and they too were found wanting. Indeed, a number of major UK house builders are currently feeling the hot breath of the CMA on their necks as we speak. If they're found guilty, it will make the £60 million in demolition fines look like chump change. Two wrongs don't make a right, I understand that. But before construction points accusing fingers at demolition, perhaps it needs to get its own house in order. Similarly, when architects, developers, politicians and environmentalists hold forth on the subject of sustainability, they'd have you believe that demolition contractors were spewing embodied carbon into the atmosphere and chucking millions of tons of valuable resources into a landfill. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no industry that is better at recycling and reuse. Someone said to me just yesterday, if a demolition contractor could find a way to harvest and resell the wallpaper, they'd do it. Meanwhile, the construction sector is profligate, wasting materials and resources at a rate that would make your head spin. The problem is that as an industry, demolition has surrendered the narrative. It's allowing others to write its story and to speak its truth. Whether it's an industrial accident, collusion, or the questioning of its environmental credentials, the demolition industry's lack of response has been deafening. It's failed and continues to fail to counter criticism. It's failed to fight its corner. And in the case of the bid rigging and collusion, the industry's silence has effectively tainted the reputation of the many with the actions of the few. If ever there was an industry in need of a PR makeover, demolition is surely it. It has so many positive stories to tell, but no one is telling them. The silence isn't working. Demolition has been cast as the villain, and no one is doing a damn thing about it. That's the monologue. But here's the thing, right? So Gary Muirhead has already mentioned Didcot, asking why I was on the BBC this morning. At some point between now and the 23rd of February, or in all likelihood, I will be back on the BBC or on Sky or something like that, talking about Didcot on the 9th anniversary and stuff. 9:45 this morning, I was on the BBC talking about the impending demolition of Grenfell Tower. And I'm doing that as a journalist. Never demolished a damn thing in my life. But they called me. They called me, not the NFDC. Why? Because the NFDC has basically fallen off the map. No one outside their own membership actually knows who they are. I have a friend in the industry who has got a friend at the BBC. And he actually quizzed them on this, and he said, why do you call this Mark Anthony fellow? I mean, as I say, he's a friend, so he's asking for all the right reasons. And they said, hey, well, hang on a minute, we do have a database of people to speak to. If there's a plane crash, we speak to this guy. If there's a fire, we speak to this guy. Who do we have for demolition? This guy. What? Why? Listen, I still get a bit of a buzz about being on the BBC, and I'm sure that at some point today my sister will phone up and say, I heard you on the radio or I saw you on the telly. I'm not entirely sure which one I was doing. But why me? And I'll tell you why. It's not because of my good looks and my winning way with an adjective. It's because nobody knows who the hell the NFDC is anymore. They've fallen off the planet. And this is not a dig at them. It's kind of a dig at them, but it's not. It's, as I've said there, for collusion, for accidents, fatalities, for Didcot, for embodied carbon, for sustainability, time and time and time again, demolition is cast as the villain. Oh, those guys over there, they kill people and they knock down historic buildings without a by your leave, and they're wasting all this embodied carbon. And nobody is standing up and saying, hang on a minute, hang on just a minute. You need to have a bit of a think about that. Nobody's doing it. So all of the time that's going on, the industry is being vilified, and why is nobody looking at that and saying, should we not be answering this? Find it incredible. What's the chat saying anyway? What do we got? There you are. Now I am off. Later, guys. Stay safe. Happy. See you tomorrow. Good man, Dan. I enjoyed the tune with the P&H machine. Thank you. I chose that. That was my own head. Well, I didn't write the music. Obviously, I just chose it from a site called Streambeats. One of my favourite YouTubers is a guy called Harris Heller, who very smartly created a website called Streambeats, where you can download copyright-free music, not just copyright-free, but financially free too. Yeah. So Harris Heller, I salute you. So yes, there you are. That's pretty much the show. Nobody seems to have anything to say about the way in which the demolition industry is being castigated. And on that basis, there will be no recap today, because it relies on that. I have to say the recap is getting quite good. I prompted by Jim Turner, I have to say, what I was doing with the recap was taking this part of the show, bunging it into an AI, making sure the AI had basically got its facts straight, and then uploading it. But Jim said that it was getting a bit preachy and a bit do-goodery, and he was dead right. So I've now created a set of prompts to keep it on the straight and narrow. So the last 4 or 5 recaps, if you're that way inclined, go and give them a listen. Because they are very, very good. If the truth's be known, you're open to everyone in the game. The NFTC has lost its way a long time ago. Look at the people who visit your show and where they are from, so keep it up. Thanks for that, Mick. Yeah, I wish they hadn't. I wish they hadn't. There are... One of the things I said on the Beeb, if you get a chance, it'll be on iPlayer at some point today. Nicky Campbell's show, round about 9:45 or thereabouts. One of the things that I said, and I realise, I can be critical of the demolition industry, and I do think that some of the foreign contractors have caught us up. But I said on the show, it will be a challenging project, Grenfell, no question about it. It will. The actual structure of the building is likely to have been undermined by the fire and by water damage and by being sat there for 8 years with nobody taking any care of it and stuff like that. It's, all this scrutiny. But I actually said, we have got elite level demolition contractors that are perfectly capable of tackling that project. And demolition, regardless of everything that I occasionally say here on the show, regardless of all of that, demolition remains one of the few fields in which Britain is still a world leader. If you go to the States, which I have, you go to Japan, which I have, you go to across Europe, which I have, go to pretty much anywhere in the world and talk about demolition, and most other countries look to us with envious eyes because we are that good. We really are. So something like Grenfell, well within the capabilities of a UK demolition contractor. But why are we not shouting about it? And I realise I'm quite lazy, but I do often fall back on sporting metaphors. As a nation, we are ridiculously over-expectant upon our football team. Our football team that has basically achieved nothing, really, for 60-odd years. We still have hope and expectation, and we still, make a lot of razzmatazz about those. And yet we have, in other sports, actual world leaders. Cycling, rowing. Personally, I think Lewis Hamilton is a bit of a tool, but you got to say he's pretty damn good at his job. Some of our golfers, Luke Littler in the darts, whoever's the current world champion over in snooker is probably a Brit. I don't actually know because I don't follow it. But we have all this razzmatazz about bits about things that we're not particularly good at, and yet there's a thing here that we're really, really, really good at: demolition, and nobody talks about it. Yeah. Mick says, stay safe, fellas. I need to walk the hound and kick the Waitrose trolley up the arse. Give Waitrose my best regards. Incidentally, if you're on your way to Waitrose, I realise I don't often do recommendations of this nature, and they're not paying me to say this, sadly. If you go into Waitrose and you see a little tub or in the chilled counter for whipped feta, yes, whipped feta cheese. Oh, it's a bit special, fellas. Nice bit of warm pita bread and a tub of whipped feta. You could die a happy man. Jim Turner says, never listen to mainstream radio or journalists. They are just a load of shit-stirring bastards. Meaning, if you're becoming the voice of demolition, then so be it. It's a weird thing, isn't it? And listen, I'm happy to sit here and talk demolition up and praise it from the skies because I do have a lot of respect for it. But isn't it weird that a journalist has become that? Weird. Mick says, missed out on the BBC. We'll look back later. Yeah, as I say, I think BBC iPlayer tends to work by the hour. So I think if it went out at 10, it'll be available at 11. Radio 5 Live, I was on screen, so whether they will actually have images to go with it, I'm not entirely sure. But Dr. Yvonne Waterman says, good morning, Mark. Your recent writing has been very good and relevant. There is much to improve in the sector of demolition, health and safety everywhere in all countries. Pointing that out is not preachy at all. It's highly relevant. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And she also says, thank you for the tip on the feta. English supermarkets are the best. You don't know until you're not here, do you? Funnily enough, there's a guy called Lucas works for Bobcat over in Debris, over in the Czech Republic. I was sat there having dinner one night for him, and apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently Czech Republic used to have branches of Marks and Spencer, and apparently this was a real go-to. A real go-to, you know. It was, you're going to get your food from M&S? Oh, fantastic! They're not there anymore, and he really misses them. Yeah. Gary Muirhead says we had haggis bonbons from Tesco last night. Haggis bonbons. Oh. Yes, please. What have we got here? Jim Turner says George Digweed was one of our best and most successful sportsmen. I bet on me and Chris Ford. I bet only me and Chris Ford have ever heard of him. Well, I'm out. I've no idea who Jim Digweed is at all. He sounds like a character from a Monty Python sketch, but I don't know who he is. Would you care to enlighten us at all? Or do I have to look? Let me look him up. Let's have a look. George Digweed. Ah, yes, fine figure of a man. Apparently, he was a bit handy with the clay pigeon shooting. Big lad by the looks of it. But yes, who knew? George Digweed. It happens in a different field of expertise for me. Mick says, done all the shooting I needed in the army. And Chris Ford says, you're right there, Jim. Yeah. Well, is this because you guys are out in the rurals and you shoot yourselves? Or is he from your part of the country? George Digweed. Didn't see where he was from. Let's have a look. He was born in Hastings. So no, not well, unless he moved. Not a local for either of those guys. Gary Muirhead says, my steel-wrist friend from Sweden says they don't eat IKEA meatballs. They're rotten. I make a point of not disagreeing with steel wrist on anything. But IKEA meatballs are the only reason to go to IKEA, aren't they? Yeah. Rotten they may be, but I thoroughly enjoy them. Bit of the old lingonberry. Jim Turner reckons he was from Essex. He may well have been. Can't see. I can see he was born April 1964. He's 60 years old. There's a coincidence. But he was born in Hastings. Yeah. Former English shooter, clay shooting champion. Started shooting at the age of 12. Yeah, there you are. You live and learn, don't you? Anyway, people, I think that will probably do us. I'm going to be back tomorrow with something that hopefully will be a bit less disjointed than it was today. See, the BBC, they drop into your life, upset your schedules and your routines, and then they go about their business like you never even existed. But I'll be back tomorrow for more of the same. So 10 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, everybody, please look after yourselves. I'll see you very, very soon. All the best.